Thank you so much for joining me live today wherever you are. I really appreciate your time, and I know you're all super busy, so I won't hold you up for much longer trying to figure out all the tech as to why LinkedIn is not working. But today's going to be a really interesting conversation around toxicity and how it impacts our brain health. We've been doing a series over the past few weeks on all of the things that contribute to cognitive decline, and one of them is toxins, right? And how toxins affect the brain. So I want to share with you, if I can, I want to show you a brain scan, if it will allow me. Yep, here it is. There we go. It's working. Okay, so toxicity. So here on the screen, what you see are 3 SPECT scans. So SPECT stands for, it's an acronym that stands for single photon emission computed tomography. And it's a nuclear study that's done that basically shows blood flow to the brain. So here what you're seeing is, for someone who's consuming alcohol, you want a full healthy brain doesn't have those holes on it, right? Those craters you're seeing, when you see like the dips, for example, here in the anterior cingulate, I don't know if you can see my cursor moving on that alcoholic brain. That's the anterior cingulate. Those dips means that the blood flow to that area is really low. When you see full out holes like right here, that means there's no blood flow in that area. As you can see, the cocaine addict in their anterior cingulate, the anterior cingulate is your brain's gear shifter. That's the area of the brain that manages your ability to shift attention. Folks who have lots of blood flow, like too much blood flow in that area, tend to be worriers. A cocaine addict with these holes here, they're not worried at all. They have no care, concern at all. But you see back here in the occipital lobe, there are holes here. The point of me showing you these SPECT scans, even the marijuana user, you can see in the frontal lobe, there are holes. Now, the prefrontal cortex is really important. You can see the marijuana user, alcohol user, especially in the cocaine addict, the frontal lobe is not getting proper blood flow. And the prefrontal cortex is basically the CEO of your brain. Thinking through consequences, making strategic decisions and choices, right? So your ability to make wise choices to be successful in life is dependent on the health of your prefrontal cortex. And this is just to show what happens when you're consuming these substances, right? How it's deteriorating brain function. If you continue to use these substances, this will only get progressively worse and lead to not only cognitive decline, but also mental health disturbances, issues with anxiety, depression, aggression, mood swings, irritability, behavior changes, right? Your whole personality changes. What are the risk factors? We looked at some just now, right? Smoking, even marijuana, especially the marijuana, the weed plant, is not a bad, harmful herb. However, even if you were smoking broccoli, it's not good for the body, because our body was not made to smoke, right? Ultimately, that's what you see happening here. It's obviously having adverse effects on the brain. Regardless of what your feelings are on marijuana, there are some helpful medical use cases for it, but not smoking it. Mold exposure is a big one that affects a lot of people, actually. And the tricky thing with mold is, even if you leave the environment, if you haven't cleared it from your nostrils, like I've heard cases where people are still dealing with the symptomology of mold exposure because the mold is still in their nasal cavities and hasn't been cleared out. So you definitely want to get that checked and treated if you've had mold exposure and you're experiencing some adverse effects with your brain function, mental health, Carbon monoxide, which we're going to talk about. I have a really great resource for you. I'm pretty sure you've seen movies and shows where folks, are in a really bad place and they've decided to just end it all, and they sit in the car in a closed garage with the windows down and let the car run. That's carbon monoxide exposure. This is just to show in high concentration, yes, the fumes from the car is deadly to the brain. But even in low doses of that, like when we're going to the gas station, for example, or we're dealing with gasoline in our homes, if you are using it for, I don't know, lawn mowers or whatever things you have using around the house, how you manage that, where you store it, all that stuff is going to be really important to mitigate exposure of toxic fumes to the brain. Cancer, chemo, and radiation are toxic to the brain as well. That doesn't mean that if you are in a situation where you have to utilize these treatments to overcome a cancer situation, don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. You have to really work with your doctor on that and make your own judgment call on that. However, going through this, what you want to do is optimize your metabolic health, right? So there's some labs that I really encourage everyone to run, that in my trainings I typically share with my clients. I typically share these labs you need to run to optimize your metabolic health, optimize brain health. And so as you're going through this cancer treatment, you can work on all the other things, and after you finish this, try to detox the body from that. But all of the other things that we do are going to help support the body in doing that. So the cancer, chemo, and radiation have not as strong an adverse impact on the body, right? So you have to be really intentional. Since you know that it's a toxic poison for the brain, you just have to be intentional about it. Because even anesthesia, for those who go through procedures and have to go under anesthesia, that's also toxic to the brain as well. But that doesn't mean that you want to avoid that in all situations, right? You just have to understand that and be intentional about what your healing protocol is going to be after the fact and what you're going to do during to mitigate the risk factors. Heavy metal toxicity is an issue that also hurts the brain. Mercury, lead, and aluminum. Mercury tends to come from dental fillings. So I really highly encourage working with a holistic dentist, right, who is going to educate you and help you in finding the right materials if you are in a situation where you need to have any fillings or do any removals, because removals is really important, especially if you've had mercury fillings and you want to remove those fillings. That has to be done in a very careful manner so that you don't get exposed to mercury leaching into your bloodstream, basically, through your mouth. I'm not an expert in this. However, I've heard some really sad cases of folks with mystery illnesses, a lot of issues going on in the body that basically point to heavy metal toxicity. So you really need to deal with, first of all, a holistic dentist if you feel like it's coming from your mouth to get that resolved, but also working with functional medicine doctor, because you may need some special treatments for that to purge yourself of these heavy metals. One of the treatments that I've heard of is chelation therapy, but they have some other things that you can use. I know there's some seaweeds like spirulina that's really helpful in some of these treatments, but working with someone on this is going to be critical. Aluminum, making sure not to use aluminum pots and pans, right? So the cookware is important. We talk a lot too on my podcast, the Raw Food Health Empowerment Podcast, about PFAS chemicals, right? Which has come into our exposure to it has primarily been through these non-stick Teflon coated pots and pans. And they found that it's a carcinogen, right? It's causing birth defects, all of this stuff, right? So it's highly toxic, these PFAS chemicals, and the fact that they're forever chemicals. So they're in the environment now, and there's not much we can do about it, unfortunately. But basically, You want to make sure when you're dealing with pots and pans that you buy stainless steel, right? You want to make sure you buy stainless steel. That's the healthiest cookware that's out there, and avoid aluminum, right? So you can mitigate your exposure to the PFAS chemicals and also aluminum, so you're not getting those heavy metals. What goes on your body goes in your body and affects your brain. This means you really need to be conscious about your body care products, right? So one great tool I really encourage you downloading and using is the Environmental Working Group Healthy Living app to scan personal products. They're online, they have the Healthy Living app, and also on your phone so you could scan. But online, they have the Skin Deep database so you could check different body care products. I usually do that before I buy any product, especially hair care, because with hair care products, there's a lot of endocrine disruptors and things in there, carcinogenic chemicals. All of this stuff is affecting the brain. You can get really clean products. You just need to be intentional about doing your research first. And this will be an element that you just add, but it doesn't take too much time out of you. I know some folks are concerned, like, this is just too much, right? When we're learning something new, it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but it is feasible. You can do it. You just have to be intentional about it. And I think understanding what's happening with the brain, the fact that it can change your entire personality, I think is important enough to prioritize that, to making sure that you're using the safest products possible. You can also decrease your exposure to toxicity by buying organic produce. Avoid fumes when pumping gas. I have a link in the description to this video where you can learn more about this, right? How can you avoid fumes when pumping gas at the gas station? There's a way to mitigate exposure, and I just posted a blog post on this at rawfoodmealplanner.com /avoid fumes. I believe that's what it's called, avoid fumes, something like that. But you can see the link in the description to this video. But ultimately, you don't even have to deal with gas if you get an electric vehicle. And there are government incentives to get an electric vehicle. I remember meeting this guy one time in LA where he mentioned that with all the rebates he got, it basically paid for the Tesla. So I don't know all of what he managed to piece together, but California had some incentives. And then there's all these rebates, right, that are available nationwide. And he ended up paying like a ridiculously low amount. I mean, in this crazy low numbers for his Tesla. So you have to research it. I know there's this thing called National Drive Electric Week. It's a national event that is run by this organization that I can't remember the name of the organization now. But yeah, if you Google National Drive Electric Week, you can get tapped in with communities of folks who, this is what they do, right? They're involved and they use, they drive electric vehicles. They're very passionate about electric vehicles. So you could tap in and get connected with them and see how you can take advantage of all the resources that the government has available. Because we all really need to be moving in this direction. So you got to figure out if it makes sense for you, where you are, and all of that kind of stuff. Quit smoking, obviously. Avoid secondhand smoke, right? We already know that. But also with this is if you live in a building where there's a food place downstairs and they're burning animal meat, right? This is also toxic and is a known carcinogen. Dr. Greger talks about this in his book, How Not to Die. So it's not just about smoking and secondhand smoke. It's also like where you live and making sure that you're not around like burning meats. You want to support your kidneys, your detoxification organs, right? So your kidneys, your liver, your gut, your skin. So drink more water. You should be drinking at least half your body weight in ounces of water. Danny, thanks for joining live. Desi, thanks for joining live. Your liver, you want to support your liver by eliminating alcohol. There is no healthy amount, right? So keep your liver clean. And a great food I would highly recommend that you get to fall in love with and just try is dandelion, which is really great for cleaning the liver, cleaning the blood. It's a nice bitter herb. You can add it to any salad, right? It basically it has the texture of, I would say, like kale, but less chewy, right? It's not gnawing like spinach. I find spinach to be a little gnawing in terms of its taste, but it's definitely, if you haven't had dandelion leaves in a salad before, try it. You can even add it to smoothies, especially if you're using a lot of sweet fruit. The dandelion, I find, really cuts that sweet flavor, so you're not getting that big insulin spike. You can eat more cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These are all your cruciferous vegetables. Dandelion leaves apparently is also a crucifer, but folks tend to have some gas issues with cabbage and cauliflower. Dandelion, I've never heard of folks having any kind of gas or digestion issues when it comes to dandelion. And if you've had cabbage and cauliflower and you're having some excessive gas and bloating, you just want to be mindful of dosage until your gut microbiome builds up the bacteria to digest it properly, right? So you can thrive on these foods, and you absolutely should be focusing on crucifers for many different reasons. I think metabolic health, this is going to be highly, highly important, because you're getting high amounts of protein in foods that have low calories, so that's very little energy, but high protein. When we talk about metabolic health and folks who are dealing with obesity or trying to build muscle mass, it's a great tool, because you can eat lots of it, get full off of it, build that muscle, burn that fat, right? So it's just amazing. And on top of that, all of what it's doing for the body in terms of killing cancer and avoiding getting a cancer diagnosis. Support the gut by eating more fiber. You should be eating exclusively fiber, in my opinion, right? Meat, dairy, eggs has no fiber and is also not helpful for the body. It's not helpful for the cardiovascular system, not helpful for the gut, and you need a healthy gut and cardiovascular system to have a healthy brain. Support the skin with sweat, with exercise and saunas. And this is one of the things that I really love about living in Central Florida, where I am right now, because it's hot and it's humid, and I go out for a walk and I don't have to do like the up and down jump flippy things, and I am able to sweat and purge. It's like a sauna and cardio at the same time. I save time. Avoid handling cash register receipts. The receipts have BPA. This is bisphenol A, which is a plastic, basically. It's a plastic compound, chemical, and it's also an endocrine disruptor. We need proper hormonal balance in order to have a healthy brain. When hormones aren't balanced, you may have noticed people's moods change, their behavior change. And BPA, because it's an endocrine disruptor, that's basically, what it does, right? It's disrupting hormonal balance. So what I've seen people do who are concerned about this is that instead of holding on to the receipt, right? For a lot of us, we want to make sure we have the receipt, because some of us can't afford to not take a receipt, right? So I'm one of those people, when I leave a store, I always take the receipt, because I don't want to get accused of taking anything. This has happened to folks who look like me. So I'm really concerned about it. So what I've seen people do is, I usually just like drop it in my bag and I just don't hold on to it for a long time. But I've seen people just take a picture of it and not even take it. Like, they don't touch it, they just take a picture of it, so they have record of the purchase without having to touch the receipts. Some folks in some communities, they use gloves when they're out doing things and they have to touch receipts, which makes sense, so you don't have that skin contact with the BPA, because through your pores you are absorbing these chemicals. And also, you don't want to drink or eat out of plastic containers. Plastic sheds just like our skin sheds. And so what's happening is, we're consuming now microplastics. It's showing up everywhere. It's showing up in fetuses and we're being affected. They're seeing that it's affecting men and their testes, and it's affecting women. The plastics, again, these are endocrine disruptors and obesogenic chemicals. So if you are on a weight loss journey, if you want healthy, balanced hormones, and I'm talking your sex hormones, that's testosterone, estrogen, even progesterone, but also your thyroid hormones, if you want that in balance. If your thyroid hormones aren't in balance, it can look like bipolar disorder, And even because the brain is being affected by all of this, you may think you even have Alzheimer's. Some folks are being diagnosed with Alzheimer's and they don't have Alzheimer's. They have depression, actually, with further study and evaluation. But this is just to show you that certain things can mimic mental health issues, that it's not necessarily that. So we want to be as cautious as possible. And so ultimately, what is the point of doing all of this stuff, of being mindful of all of this, is to protect your own brain and save it from the dark place. What are all the things that can make the brain go bad? Toxins is a huge element to it. So as much as you can do to mitigate your exposure to these toxic chemicals, you will be doing your brain a great service. All right. If you have any questions about anything, definitely let me know in the comments to wherever you're watching this, and check out the website so you can see my recommendations on how to mitigate your exposure to gasoline fumes. It's over at rawfoodmealplanner.com/avoid gas fumes. And for those of you who've joined me live, thank you so much for being here, and have a blessed week. Take care.